Welcome back to episode 3 of I Got Something to Say. I'm so glad to have you guys back. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about planning for 2024. I try not to get up into all the hula of planning 2024, and I'm going to show you a gentler way that I'm handling myself as I plan for the year ahead. And then the second part of the podcast, I want to talk about the power of our thoughts keeping us alone. And yeah, let's get into it. I have some concepts that I want to talk to you guys about. As a creative and someone who doesn't like to be boxed in, I will say I've never just planned out the year and wrote down all these goals. It just all seems so pointless to me. Pointless in the sense that I'm probably not going to keep up with it. Not that it's a pointless act, but pointless for me, right? But as I'm trying to do things better and really have a follow through for myself, I'm planning 2024 in a loose way. And I just want to talk to you about that loose way, and maybe it'll give you inspiration for how you want to plan for 2024. And really, I just want to remove the fact that it has anything to do with 2024 and just further stamp that this is just how I want to move in my life going forward. There doesn't really have an end date. So when 2024 ends, and hopefully I'm here to see the end of it, I'm not going to say, oh, okay, new goals. These are probably things that will continue to move in my life. And that's what I'm praying for. New Year, there's always this unnecessary pressure about eating better, doing things better. All of a sudden, when the clock strikes, we're going to do things differently. And for most people, they don't stick with it, myself included. But I have already started working on these things that I'm going to talk to you about in 2023. And I just want to be more intentional about them in 2024. One of the main things that I want to focus on is having follow through. I was talking to a girlfriend about me coming up with ideas a lot of times and not seeing them through. And there are so many reasons that I haven't saw them through. And so I want to back up and say that prior to me figuring out follow through, there was a vital step that I was missing. And maybe this is something that you can agree with and something that you can also relate to. So the problem with my follow through, one of the main reasons that I feel like I wasn't following through is because I didn't have clarity on myself. So any goal that I made, it didn't really have anything to do with me. So I had to spend some time this year really being quiet and really getting to know myself, treating myself better, and figuring out what's going to work for Brittany. How can I sustain my mental health? How can I sustain being a parent and sustain being a wife and also nurture these goals and ideas that I have? So let's dig a little bit deeper. So one of the goals I had starting this year was to write a book. When I sat down in my quiet time and really questioning myself and holding myself to the standard of what do you really want? Doesn't matter if it makes sense. Doesn't matter if it fits with what you're doing right now. Just remove all of those parameters. And what came up is that you wanted to write a book. You've always wanted to write a book. You did like little light poetry. You wrote a children's book. But what you really want is an actual novel. And you want the novel to have a point in people's life. You want them to remember first reading the book. These are the things that you want to hear. So from that honesty and from that clarity, I have been able to make goals around that. I think that sometimes when we do these goal sheets and the planning for the year, they're just things that would sound good if we said them out loud. They sound good to ourselves even, but they're not truly what we want. A lot of times we think our goals need to be attached to productivity, what our output is, how much money we're making for the year. And I'm just totally rejecting that, because what is it that I really want? I want stability in my relationships. I want to grow deeper in my marriage. I want to grow deeper bonds with my kids. I want to be intentional about our time together. These are the things that I'm pouring into, and these are the things that matter to me, not how much money is in my bank account. So to round it out, this conversation, these are the buckets that I came up with. Family, meaning some goal that you want for your family. So like I already told you guys, I want to be more intentional. And then I have personal as the next goal. And for me personally, this year, I want to travel out of the country. I've never been out of the country. So that is a personal goal. Then the next bracket is intentional living, and that's an output goal. And so this would be attached to the book and the podcast. These are things that I want to put out in the world and I want to put my energy towards. And the last one is a spiritual goal. And that's just me. For me right now, spiritually, I just feel a pull to rest, to really listen to God, to sit in silence and understand how I'm connected to those around me and I'm connected to nature. Those are my spiritual goals right now. I think when my goals are connected to my heart, I'm going to have a better success rate because there's something behind the goals. When I had these grandiose ideas about making $100 million or doing real estate, I didn't factor those into how I really want to live my life and knowing that I want space to be with my family. Real estate, the way that I was doing it, didn't really offer that. And I realized that wasn't my goal. I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I want to own real estate. That doesn't mean that I can't own real estate, but I just want to spend right now doing work that speaks to my heart. Point blank, period. For the second half of this, I want to talk about a Super Soul episode that I watched from Oprah with Eckhart Tolle. So he's the author of the book called New Earth. I read it a while ago, so I do need to revisit the book. But they weren't diving into the book. In this episode, they were talking about the crisis of us being so divided, the political crisis that we're in, all the things with Donald Trump, and just why it feels like we're more divided as a country than we have been previously, that there feels like there's something in that atmosphere that's different than before. So when Oprah asked Eckhart, why does he think all of these things are happening? He had a very interesting thought, and it made me think about some things that I had already had on my mind. So his response was essentially, we all have these opinions and we have these mindsets about life. And we before weren't attaching ourselves so much to those thoughts, those opinions, and those mindsets and keeping us trapped in those thoughts. And essentially, because we're so tied to how we think, it's allowing us to bump heads. Essentially, we're not able to connect because we're so busy thinking about our differences and not what keeps us together and what keeps us similar. So I'm like, so I don't know. It just, when I heard it, it was like, oh my goodness, it just was reaffirming the thoughts that I had about people in these different little trends that I see on TikTok, where there's like the tread wife, the stay-at-home girlfriend, the soft life, all these little genres or little trends that people are attaching themselves to, which we're going to always continue to do that. We're social animals. But the simple fact that we're tying our thoughts to it so heavily keeps us bottled in. We're not able to connect with each other because we're trying to judge each other's lifestyles by this lifestyle that we decided to live, this simple life we decided to live versus this extravagant life someone else is living, and it makes it seem like we can't meet in the middle. From hearing this, it made me think about something that I've been having on my mind, and it's that our brain is a tool. Our brain is there to warn us about things, to collect information, to gather information so that we can continue to make sound decisions. But sometimes our mind is wrong. So if you think about all the, like, let's just say, so a good example would be if you're mad at your spouse, right? If you're mad at your spouse, you may be thinking all these negative things, right? Not positive things. I'm not going to name them. Y'all just fill in the blanks, right? But you know, as a person, you have to shuffle through your own thoughts to come up with the best way to handle that situation. So yes, you may think, ooh, I'd rather just leave the house. Oh, I'd rather do something that I'm not supposed to do, right? But you, the person, know that overall, I love this person. This is my mate. I need to treat them how I want to be treated. I have to give them grace. So what is the best course of action for me to make them a nice meal and apologize, and we can talk further, whatever your ending solution is. But usually you're going to go with the positive solution if you're in a state where you're deciding I want to do the best in everything, right? You're going to go with the more positive thing. So that's one example of you listening to your thoughts. Are you having your thoughts go by, but you not picking anything to do with those thoughts, right? Feel your anger, but then decide to make decisions that are going to best suit you and your relationship and what you want your life to look like going forward. This how this relates to what I'm saying about Eckhart Tolle is that I feel like we're at a point where people are taking their thoughts and they're attaching so much worth and value to everything that they're thinking, and they want their thoughts to be out there. They want their thoughts to have a voice, and for someone to say, oh, that sounds good, you're right, I like how you think, whatever it may be. They're not just letting their opinion be an opinion and not something that they're attaching to their emotions and who they are as a person. But it also made me realize is the fact that we're keeping ourselves divided because of this. We're not able to hear each other, and we're not able to hear each other because we're so much in our mind. It made me think about in the Bible where it's saying to guard your heart at all costs, essentially. And so you even have to guard your heart from your mind and from these thoughts, because I realize that fear and anxiety is made in the brain. It doesn't have anything to do with your heart. If you search your heart, you will realize your heart is probably your most purest, your kindest part of you. Your heart is where you're able to forgive someone. Your heart is the place where you can give something else a chance. That's where your passion lives. That's where your soul lives. So you even have to guard your heart from your mind, because your mind can just be a slippery slope of coming up with all the bad things that are going to happen. So when I talked about earlier writing the book, my soul wants to write the book, right? But my mind can think of a million reasons why I shouldn't write the book. So I even have to guard my heart from my mind saying, well, no one will read it. Do you even know how to write a book? What about your grammar, right? Your mind can go down all those paths. And if you're stuck in your mind, it's going to be hard for you to connect with someone else. It's going to be hard for you to sometimes even connect with your own true self. I know that seems like I went on a whole nother road, but listening to him brought all of that out for me, and it made me realize that's why we're struggling with connecting with each other, and that's why we feel so alone. We're attaching so much power and so much of our time to what we think, what other people think. Does that make sense? Instead of just relaxing and let our brain be our brain, let it do what it does, not judge every thought, not think that everything you think you have to put somewhere, you have to categorize it and you have to name it. No, some thoughts are just going to pass by. Just let them pass through you. And I think that's what meditation is. It's being able to sit in silence. You can't shut your brain off, but it's being able to just ride the waves of your brain doing what it needs to do, what it's going to do, and you being able to just be still and not move because your brain thought of something, right? Because that's just what it's going to do. I hope that made sense. I hope you guys followed me down that path. But I know that in order for us to fix what Eckhart Tolle is essentially calling a crisis, we're going to have to get in touch with our heart. Also in the episode, he began to say that most changes in people are going to happen because of a crisis. And right now we are in a crisis. We are in a loneliness epidemic. And we are so divided that sometimes it feels like, how are we going to come back together? But he looks at the crisis as a challenge in that every generation or every so often there's a challenge to our collective consciousness. And right now that is a challenge for us. And he's saying that consciousness is always going to want to answer for its challenges. So at some point we're going to have an answer to this, and I want our answer obviously to be positive. And so having this podcast and having this format has allowed me to feel comfortable about how we're going to move forward. And not to say that my podcast is some solution, but I want to be a part of us having these conversations. How do we move forward and build community? How do we continue to have more third spaces? And what does it look like for our generation that's following us? What are we leaving them? What values are we trying to continue to nurture that we want them to also have as well? So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I just wanted to start the conversation of what does it look like for us to connect with each other? Do you feel like we are too in our heads and it's causing us not to be able to connect? What solutions do you have? I would love to hear from you, and I will see you guys on the next episode.